Hey everybody, welcome to July 24th, 2025 Principal Profit Trader Coaching Call. As we discussed about a week or so ago, because we think in terms of phases at PPT, we said that Bitcoin was probably going to go into this sideways phase. This is when we got the bigger picture balance breakout, right? But then we went into this sort of false breakout, sort of, you know, sideways potential phase because we got the thrust up and now it moves and now it needs to rest for a little bit. And that selling tail is sort of the heads up that that's what was going to happen. And this is where we are. But this is actually pretty good because remember when I said that when we break out, we don't want it to be sort of like a false breakout where then it would come back into balance. We want it to break out and then build structure. That's really healthy, right? So you might say, well, why are you shorting this today? It's like, well, even though my big picture bias is bullish because obviously we've been up, and my intermediate term is also bullish because we just in the last 2 weeks broke out of this giant bounce. There's also a giant bigger picture bounce pattern. So I mean, all that is saying that every time I get to good support, I'm going to go long. But at the same time, you have to think in terms of different phases, right? This was getting short term exhausted. So I said basically, so those are the two time frames, but this is a time frame itself for traders. And we decided on the short time frame that we could go long and short. Basically, if you're sideways, that's what you can do. And if you went on the shorter time frames, we've this was sort of this is the setup that actually I took in the S&P when you're overextended and you just broke out and then you have this breakout and this huge false breakout back into balance, then you can do like a fib ratio. Anytime it gets up to good resistance at these legs, there's like these swift move down. Now today's trade was a little tricky psychologically because deep down, I'm basically just fading today's high, which was a winning trade here or whatever. But then I'm back in it now. I'm half off just because this is an intraday V, and this isn't like it's not like we haven't penetrated this zone before, but there's just not momentum today. You see, like this day here, there was this crazy momentum. So that's what I talk about the sustained momentum category. So even though when I took this short, the intraday bias was against me because it was bullish, there wasn't momentum against me. There wasn't momentum for me, but it wasn't really against me. That's why on this day I didn't take the short again because that momentum after this move here, right? On first test, I took this and then I got all out at the VWAP once I saw this action reaction. And on this one, the momentum's kind of dead. And the other reason I took this is Ethereum was also making a double top. It was doing this at this point in time. And you might say, well, isn't this so much momentum? Isn't this a trend day? I'm like, well, to me, this isn't really a trend day per se because I mean, think about what it did. It balanced here, went all the way down here, bounced up here, and then only at around 11 did we break this structure, come back down here. That would have been a good trade there for at least a reload because you would have had momentum and whatever, but at least to here. But this isn't like a pure trend day or like some kind of just double distribution day. This is sort of like a day that varies and then breaks to the upside, like a sideways up or like I like to say, a normal variation maybe the upside. They are, the most common. This is a different type of day. This is a day that just pure trend day down all day, right? So that's some of the reasons why I'm shorting. There is traders in the channel that they actually like when I short the futures because entries are exits and exits are entries. So it's like, this isn't like an investor signal to sell, but it would be basically a short signal for a day trader. Now, it's not like I would fault you for selling at the highs if you're an investor. I mean, you're basically if you don't take some risk mitigation at this point, you're just holding based on belief, right? Because you know you, the quad exit answers everybody's will this do that because I can tell you all that. I can show you the multiple time frame analysis that I just did, short, intermediate, big picture. I could show you this bigger picture pattern, and then I could say we're sideways. And then there's this moving average that's acting as support. There was a zero line reject. All that is in favor that this will break out to the upside, but you don't know until it happens, and anything can happen. And it just takes one, you know, irrational behavior from a market participant or an institution to ruin your brilliant idea. So, so as I was taking this, basically, I was saying it would be easier to take it if it was like the extremes of these. But I said this is a mature balance, But that's really all this had going for a factor for a trend. There really wasn't anything else going for it for a trend. But then I was like, okay, well, we need volatility contraction for a trend. This might be an inside day. That's another reason I shorted it ahead of time. I didn't talk about it on the channel. And inside, basically, we need a little contraction here. So all these things, you just have to plan them out ahead of time. But when they sit, and then sit through the pain of doing things that are counterintuitive, like, it didn't feel good to short there. That's why I got in and out a couple of times or whatever. One of the ways you can get better at that is just like walking away, but then you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not doing enough, you know what I mean? And then you come back. So the day trading time frame is a very tricky time frame because you're dealing with what maybe an investor would deal with emotionally over a course of like a year to 5 years, over a course of like 1 to 5 hours. And people think, oh, all day trading is this and that. It's like, well, those are just the scalpers, and there's a lot of people that are very successful at it. And it's just not something that I would recommend to somebody starting out right now. Just start on this time frame. I would say learn this. See, people don't understand that this system could be for any time frame, day, swing, position, or investor. They're buy and hold. You still are using every single. Still could do the top-down daily call. You could add in all those other edges that I added for the system, which I was sharing with Wall Street, by the way. Doesn't know some of the stuff for the ES, the 80 line thing that I have. That I thought everyone was using that. No one's really uses it that way. At least the guys I talked to didn't. But what I'm trying to say is that even if you're an investor, you can use this to your advantage. And then I would say, okay, we'll just move out to a different time frame. We'll take a break from the day trading stuff because that's only my drama. Some people do that on the intraday. But what people don't understand about the system that I teach is that it is all about the larger time frames, pretty much. The only reason I'm doing that intraday small stuff now is because I already topped down and said we're going to go in a sideways phase because of the other stuff. You can't. It wouldn't just be doing that for no reason. So here we are at the weekly, and that was a really good edge there. Also, this time cycle is really nice. So this time cycle did the first scenario that I thought might happen. We might get a breakout sooner, and then in which case this might be a target. If we failed here and just kind of created a bigger shoulder, then I would use around this area or even sooner to be an entry again at that shoulder maturity. But we didn't get that scenario too. We got this more bullish one, which is great because this is big enough for us to get a nice run out of this. Because imagine if we got this move here. Right, this is much smaller in time, so the more mature balance you have, the greater the trend potential, kinetic energy on it. So that even though it's a painful to sit through it, this is actually better in the long run. Now, just because this breaks out, patience. This is where actually the day trading time frame does come into play because I think an investor only thinks in terms of up or down. They don't think in terms of these other more nuanced, basically sideways ranges that we're going to be in for most of the time that aren't necessarily pure sideways. But this one was obviously channeling down. Sometimes this one's more pure. There's all that, and then you have to have the wherewithal to sit through them because like a lot of like you say in hindsight, you say, why didn't I hit every short and long on that range? It's because a couple of times, like one of them was at 3 a.m. I woke up and saw it on my phone. I was like, I can't do it now. It's too late. I'm too tired, Or one, I noticed that a lot of times, like I hit the morning, but then the next great entry is around like 8 p.m. to 2 p.m. Right? So there's just no way around it. So one of the things that it teaches you is just do your best with what you have and also to change your state quickly. And humility, because you have to be okay with being wrong. One of the things that I noticed with a lot of investors, and I've had this mentality too, is they lack the humility to admit that they're wrong because they always have that hope. For example, it's kind of actually been distracting, but in this project, this is my first rug pull, so hopefully no one invested in it that's listening. I didn't really recommend it this year too much. It wasn't this year's pick was SUI and Say and the AI and of course and Dot, which just got an ETF launch. But this one was obviously doing really well. An Elon trades pick at one point, and it's a micro cap. And it'd be fine if it was like something appropriate for a micro cap, but I bet quite a bit in it. And it's brutal because the guy was actually quite charismatic. He had contracts with the Dutch government. So I get, why am I bringing this in here? Because I was married to this guy's vision, and I mean, many times I had the opportunity to sell him to this. I'm staking it, but I would help him with Twitter raids. Like I got married to the project, the vision, and what the network was behind. So I and the possibility that something that was so cheap at one point that I put a large amount of money in, could make me very wealthy. That gamble, it's addicting. And what happened was yesterday, I also had to revisit another gamble. This is a very weird coin, this meticulous one. This is either going to, I just got out of this position, but in hindsight, this one, if this is true, this could potentially be one of the biggest sleepers, but it's also, it got that LTO scam element underneath it because it's such a small cap. It allegedly got these amazing partnerships, which you don't know for sure, but it seems a little bit more legit. It's the bank contracts, from what I could see, were legitimate, and the CEO was a lot more impressive than this guy Slick Rick Schmitz from Deutschland, or from I'm sorry, the Netherlands, who was hanging out with Conor McGregor, but took my money and went on a coke and hooker binge instead of doing what he had to do. So anyway, I got out of this one. I had to deal with the psychology of like, man, you put a lot of money on this. I'm down, 2/3, but it's still like a good chunk of change. Whereas the other one, it's completely gone. I'm talking like 57 grand to $400 to $600. That's my first rug pull ever. It's like, holy shit, I just got kicked in the nuts. And I was emotionally tied to it. And I was counting on that. You know what I mean? That's investment. That was a big, that was a moonshot one. This one was also a moonshot one too. It was an Elon Trains gamble energy I went through last full run. But the same play here, like this allegedly is going to be the running the network on this legitimate underground, not really well known or advertised at all, like the SUI network, which that's what I flipped to, by the way. The meta, it's like metal, I think it is, meticulous. And if that bank contract that they say they have is legit, this thing could be crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, I might have like just given up on this bag, $1 million or more. And then the thought came in my mind about one of the guys in the channel, John, who put in like 50 bucks or $100, but it turned into be just 50 because they took $50 in fees on on Uniswap for the coin flow key. And then that $50 turned into 27K. So I got greedy. He was like, well, if he could do that risk from 50 to 27, what if I put like 100K into these things? You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, that's gone. That was stupid. So, but I took what was left of this, and this is the one I do recommend that I think is a way more sure foot uh, in terms of just I mean, out of all the altcoins, this one actually has outperformed them all, and the social media presence is ridiculous. So I had to jump ship. I could be wrong. You never know. I mean, this is so what notice. I just like flipped that really nuanced probability calculation scale that I use for the trades that requires a performance state. I have to get into like a really great, state before it requires a lot of psychology to be able to see the market like that. But then I flipped into this more like investor gamble, like hopium thing, and it's a completely different thing. It's like this one is emotional. I hope it works out. I read about the paper. I like white paper, and at this point, I think they both have the pros and cons. Let's be real. Um, but one thing that I recommend for both that I only had on one for a lot of these is you have to have risk management play on all these points. Like I do for all my short-term trades, my day and swing trades. These buying holds. I also recommend now from now, have your risk management in place or you risk that run. So hopefully no one bought that. Now with Ether, I'm in a position right now where I've invested in this, and this is, the system says, this should have been a profit target right here, right? And then right at the moment when my system said to take profits there, um, I'm not going to mention it because I don't. No one would know him anyway. But I call him my ultimate contraindicator. Right at the moment when I was about to do that, I got all of this flow from the same contraindicator that was ripping on Kramer because Kramer said, now is a good time to sell Ethereum. It's approaching one of its resistance bands. And then he goes, Kramer, what does he know? You know, the whole everyone rips on Kramer. He's wrong a lot. Yeah, he's wrong a lot, but who isn't? And like, I'm wrong. You're wrong. Everyone's wrong. You know what I mean? This guy's got a lot of money and he's, you know, whatever. And I agreed. It was hard for me to agree with him after. I'm like, subconsciously, I wanted to be like, you should, and give him all these probability reasons why, even from an investment perspective, you could, you know, take the quad exit here. God forbid you take half off and move your stop for break even and solve that whole dilemma because I don't know the future. If I could figure out how to bend time and go backwards and come back as my soul who's living it forward, I would just sit back and say, okay, this one's going to here. We can keep holding through this. Who gives a shit? Because sometimes the execution of it, you know, every time I'm at the screen working, I'm giving up my time. That's it. And I got to sit back. I'm like, what did I? Hopefully, I'm building something that's going to be taken off screens at some point because sitting behind this over and over again is taxing after a while. I will say that. So that, I mean, this bull run requires a lot of energy because it's every time. It's never as simplistic as, well, last time it did this, then it has to do this. The Ethereum is getting that launch, and there is that chart that I showed everyone where it was the Ethereum to Bitcoin ratio. That's reversed for the first time. So all these things in my head, I was like looking for that bias. But it was just funny how, like, you know, I'm not in my. I guess the guy doesn't have my skills because, like, this is when I wanted to sell, and then I was telling everyone, yeah, now it's back at my support zone. You know, that could have been a shorter term trade. I'm not saying that if you're an investor taking off half and that's it, if you bought somewhere here, I mean, is God forbid you take the money and do something with it, right? I mean, what are we doing this for? I mean, I just showed you how much I've lost on this crap I could have pulled out and did something with. So, but the idea is that, you know, this is a major resistance zone, but so is this and so is that. So, like, once we broke this, broken resistance becomes support. And that's what I basically was basing it off of. And there was a zero line reject there, pretty basic stuff. And we got that. The only difference is that I wouldn't, if I was an investor and this was a reload, I would have a stop. I mean, it's too close. Here, you know, whatever. You don't need to put that in there yet. If you bought around here or here, whatever. So I'll let you know when I'm taking some off. I mean, I'll just truth be told, I'm dealing with my own psychology of violating my system because I haven't given myself the signal to do it. Probably because I've been working so hard, and this is on a whole other schematic that I got to do, and it's just more execution shit. So, but just goes to show you, just as an investor, this is just a band. Now, if we do break this is what I would think, man, we are going to have the most mega trend. But even still, you know, we got to break the real all-time highs, which happened November 21st for a lot of coins. Now, this is a V recovery, but for every V recovery, like here's a V recovery, but then it goes sideways, then it dips, and then it goes. The V sideways dip goes as Kobe coined it. And it implicit in that language, or directly rather, is just what it's doing. Now, this one matured quite a bit. And you have to ask yourself why. What was it? It was the first leg up, which was pretty violent, but it hit this major at the time support zone and it broke, right? So you have to ask yourself, is this major resistance up here? Are these key swings going to produce something of that nature? And this bullish summer that everyone thinks is going to happen might not look as bullish. I mean, what could happen is that these ones are itching to be broken, right? And then we just start bouncing once it's up here for a while. But it's really going to depend on the amount of institutions that get excited about Ethereum. That a couple of them have more been listed. Right now, Bitcoin's the darling, but Ethereum is that other one that, you know, might have some interest because as these ETFs are launching, Ethereum is usually always listed with them. So, but like I said before, for us to get the alt season and a lot of these micro caps and smaller caps, whatever, we need to see Ethereum start outperforming Bitcoin, and that's what we're seeing today. And that's what I also just basically is the system has these parts that are measurable, and I've listed them out for everybody in the system cheat sheet. They can literally write them out and stack them. But at the same time, there is this sort of contextual element that it's hard to get without screen time, because like I taught people this thing that is sort of these. I also have everything really you get for a beginner is that pre-market stuff, because they shouldn't really be doing real-time stuff. What I've done is I've done the daily call plus the other pre-market stuff, and then I added these real-time weights too, because I needed real time is the real time. I'm not gonna, and one of the things that I use is that synchronicity. So if like Bitcoin's at support, or if Ethereum's at really good support, but Bitcoin isn't quite there yet, but maybe I'll jump in early. It's called a zone lean. I can use it for exits. There's other ones as well that I talk about. But here was an example of one where, these shorts have worked out for these little scalps, and now I'm half off, and maybe this will get a big move down here. Who knows, right? But the idea is that part of me was like, oh, I shouldn't take it because look, Ethereum's already kind of trended up. I remember saying this. And technically, yeah, if something already breaks out, then I usually back off because I'm like, oh, Ethereum's leading. But I'm like, you have to do a top-down analysis even for these second coins, because look, it was leading, but it was hitting right at its super resistance zone here. So as it was doing that, I said, well, shit, this might be an exit. There was a hook from extremes here. That's so basically I said I wouldn't have the guts really to jump in and short this, but I'm not seeing all this bearish stuff despite this up momentum hitting this resistance zone and this hook from extremes. It was at least enough not to get scared out of taking these shorts here at this better zone, because this one at least had the confluence of today's double top and a couple of spots back here. The other thing you can do when you're trying to short these ranges is measure the range. So if the range is what it's like the average max on the day, then you could go with that. A couple of these shorts, like this had gone up 3,000 points. This is a good short. This was less than 3,000 points, but you can't be so literal with this stuff. There's a lot of other weights. It's less than 3,000 points dollars on the day, and that's been the average range. But it's a gradient around it, and you have to take that average true range and also look at the relative volume, because we had low volume today or average, and that's not trending. So it would make sense that we'd be a little bit under, just take the short. And I also had to overcome when I short in the channel that the investors aren't getting really, I'm like, oh, I don't want to disrespect Matt shorting on the channel. I'm like, guys, I'm not selling my spot. I'm just going on the futures and going with the price at a position size that is not going to affect the market. So, but yeah, once that's over with, it can calm you down, because there's not always going to be an opportunity on the side that you want on the day that you want it to happen. But now that we've kind of done the TA, let's just take a look at the broad market here. Yep, I talked about how SUI would have probably a pullback here, double bottom, zero line reject, and there's this intermediate term trend here. And now that it came up here, right, the bigger picture bias should be neutral because you hit something that was just as strong. At best, we're going to get a cup, a handle, and then we'll break out. SUI also was listed on that ETF, which was another reason I switched from the XPR to SUI. But the other thing about XPR that's intriguing is that the symbology of their token ticker is in so much, or at least allegedly, I'd have to see it myself. Like it's in The Simpsons, they claim, they show all their clips that it's in. It's basically being embedded. They're hinting that this XPR network is going to run that whole metal ecosystem that isn't well known to the average person, because this is like for just big bang clients. So like we were like that small group that got in early. And I'm thinking, did I just sell the fortune? But you know what? Who cares? If I sell it, I sell it. If it's a mistake, I don't know the future. But that's not looking bad for a pullback. And you can see what it did. That would be a crazy run if it did that. Anyway, but then I'm thinking, well, what if it does the LTO thing? And this is as high as it's going to go, I don't know much. I didn't know too much about it when I bet on it. And that's the risk you take when you throw paint on a wall and call it diversification and think you're de-risking. But I think there's also a benefit in just finding something that's good and getting leveraged into it and diversifying in a smaller basket than I mean, this is a lot of coins. This is nuts. It's probably something I even forgot that are on CeeLo. I don't even have on here. Oh, I do have CeeLo. Oh, Curve actually has been doing pretty good. That was one of Tika's supercharger picks from last bull run, and I believe it's an exchange. So I know this bull run hasn't had, don't call it bull run. This cycle hasn't had that retail energy at all. The retail is so asleep. All these channels that were based on just the sentiment are dead. The private channels where people have invested, they're always chatty, but just the regular average channels where I check sentiment, they're not back yet. They check in, but they're not back yet. But they never come in at the right time. It's counterintuitive. It doesn't feel good to sit around the lows at a lot of these prices and wait. But like I said, DOT listed on that ETF. It's just funny when you talk to these crypto bros how you know uh on online, like, oh, Polkadot's dead. That's an old cycle coin. I hear that. I even have friends that are fundamentalists that say that. Meanwhile, it's like, well, it just got listed for institutions. I talked to one of my fraternity brothers who was on his Wall Street. He's got his own fund, and he invested in it last time and was interested in it, and he's just getting into it now again. It's like, well, how old is this coin? This whole thing where they have to be in early and get that crazy run is how I lost a lot of money, which I talked about before you guys came on, in these shit coins, which one of them rugged. But I mean, I think this one has that risk. I mean, this thing got to $55, $56. It was one of my best trades last bull run. And it's around that. I've reloaded into it. It's around that same price. I mean, I think last bull run I was even got in at six something. So this is even better. It's now just, intermediate term up, pulled back continuation, pulled back into the support zone. And it's got that ETF launch. And it's, a larger cap, which is it's great. You're not going to get that crazy volatility like you will with LTO or XPR network, which was originally named Proton. They've rebranded to XPR network. So before you guys came on, I talked about one of the reasons I shorted is that I imagined today would be an inside day because one of the factors that lead to a trend is a mature balance, but that's just one little thing. And you never know which day. It can go another 2 weeks and it's still maturing. It just puts us on alert that we're maturing. But one of the other things that adds to it is a volatility contraction. So when you have when I shorted that, I was like, it doesn't have to be up here. That would have been a better short, but there was enough smaller time frame reasons to get in support zones and price patterns and whatnot. And the other thing is just imagining the next day type. We would need some volatility traction to get an expansion. What would be what I would like a breakdown here to just get that one last tail into this moving average and then get a blast out. But I don't know. We'll see. It's tough to say. Like we broke out. We this is what we needed, and we also need to build structure above the bigger picture bounce breakout. But at the same time, even though this would feel terrible coming down here, that would be an entry. That would be great. It's better than, trying to buy a breakout when there's guys like me on the futures, knowing that some bigger players are going to be selling now, and that at least in the short term, this is going to be neutral, back and forth. And that's why the larger time frame bias category is neutral. Notice this is like one of the first times where I was like, okay, we can start shorting again because once we came out of this larger time frame bias into this bigger picture breakout where this bounce is bigger than that bounce and this trend is bigger than that trend and this is mature enough, right? This double bottom would put us on alert that now this bearish larger time frame bias, which then became like neutral bearish, can now become bullish. And that's what happened. So then we back off from the shorts until when we got up here. And then I said back off the shorts when this candle closed here because it was a confirmed bigger picture bounce breakout. So we were long, mostly long. And then when this matured enough, when I said it was going into the sideways phase, that's when the larger time frame bias is neutral in that category. And now we can go long and short again on, support resistance or double tops or double bottoms. And that's the plan. simple to say ahead of time in real time. You're kind of dealing with a lot of, is this going to work out or not? Even though you know you condition yourself, you don't want to be in that state. You have to trade in a flow state where that is not even going to affect you. So when it does come up, because it comes up, oh, is this going to work out or not? Just observe it and then go into your scale. I went into all the reasons why I should have shorted today. Then I went against at that moment in time why I shouldn't. I snapshotted it real time. I said, okay, well, the system said to short it for tradable reaction. At least I can get a bounce and see what happens. And did. And that's the best we can do. And then we can go from there. We'll see if we can get a larger move out of it. But these are sort of the internal, you're almost like having these internal conversations with various aspects of yourself. One of them is just that it'd be like that wounded child or that reptilian brain that's just trying to protect you because it senses your adrenaline going up, even though you're not really in real danger. So, yeah, Sabril says retail seems to be chasing pump style fun meme coins. Yeah, you know what would be great is if they start to chase the SUI meme coins. I mentioned like the Blub and a few of them I mentioned on there. Hopefully someone, and then also Wall, some of those micro caps associated with it. That would be great. Retail seems to be chasing pump and dump. See who else is in the room. Tim's in the room. I know Tim is traded ES, so I'll take a look at that. I also trade that on occasion. I just basically said to tell myself I cannot trade them all the time together because I have to have the energy for it. So I'm like today I couldn't even look at the S&P because I barely had that. I had the short Bitcoin always takes more of an energy on me because shorting is always seems to be a little bit energetically harder than for me for going long. And I was like, I can't do both. So always check in with yourself and see like, hey, I'm going to cut this market out, concentrate more on this. But I did short this one the other day. And I believe it worked out. Yeah, because it's kind of a similar context. We know the larger, we know that if we get back to any decent support zone that we kick in the intermediate and bigger picture buys, we get time frame alignment again. But until this broke out, right, there was opportunities to short because we were in a sideways phase. Now that we just broke out of this, it's just insane to me right now that ES seems to be like leading Bitcoin. So basically, this is what I think will happen with Bitcoin. It's going to follow what ES is going to do. A modest, remember, so it's like, well, when I said when we break up of a giant bounce, or in this case, a V pattern, but you could draw a box and think this is a touch point here. But when you break above it, you want to hold structure above it. The fact that this is shallow is a good indication that the bulls were going to break out. It wasn't like it was super volatile. We were going to have to come back to the bounce breakout spot or touch this down here. Going to Bitcoin, we can see that that's similar time frame on the short-term buys as yes. So with this volatility contraction, if it wasn't for a Friday, if it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday, that would be the time of the week that it would increase the odds. But I do anticipate that we'll get some type of volatility expansion. I checked the economy day. I don't think there's anything newsworthy tomorrow that would help move it. So, I'm on alert for a breakout. But what could happen is that we'll get, it could be a volatile sideways day if you whip to both sides, right? You can go up here, look like it, fade this double top short, come back down, and have one of those days that break both sides like that. I forget what they're called, a neutral day or something. So, but yeah, that's what the whole daily call is. It's just basically a systemized way to look at that sheet and imagine it ahead of time. But if you do it so much and just know all these different things, they'll come to you and you can just talk about it. And that's, quote unquote contextual analysis. But if you guys have any coins or markets you want me to look at, you can text it in the chat or any questions as well. As I'm just looking around here, I'm glad Ethereum got this bounce on this broken resistance now acting as support. And it is, someone raised their hand. Oh, I have to unmute you. See, retail. How do I do that? Asked him. I just asked him, but you said your mic wasn't working.
Hello.
Oh, hey, you got it to work. How are you?
Yay! I finally figured it out.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. If say I have a position in Ethereum, I've been holding for a long time, and I'm looking to shave profits off, is there a general rule that you use for, let's say, do you do like say 25% at a time whenever you go, or it's just what do you go by feel? What's your process?
So for basically taking profits on like a buy and hold.
A
Okay.
long-term hold. Yeah, I've had Ethereum for oof, since 20, I don't know, years, 2018, whatever. And now I'm looking to take profits, and I've been doing it in chunks, but I'm just wondering what other people do.
Well, may I ask what your entry price was?
Ooh, I'd have to look it up. It was probably I don't have the price in front of me, but it was probably around 2018, 2019, some. And then I kept adding into it a little bit on some plays on Uniswap that I was doing.
That's a great price. So congratulations. Seems like you've almost doubled your money.
Yeah, it there is a chunk that I have that it's definitely a little over the double, just slightly that. So I've just been taking, because I don't want to round trip that again. I saw it double a couple years ago, and then I said, oh, I'm just going to sit on it. And because I have a combination of that and some day trading I like to do. So I slept on a few coins and I watched them round trip, and I that was painful.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now, and it is a painful lesson. So I get there's, just correct process is, you're at this major resistance zone, right? And it's a place where, sellers have been active. So any trader would be on alert to at this zone. At the same time, right? You also you have to look at, how is price getting there? Like what is the story, right? There's this V, right? We have the cup or the sideways dip go, and then we just blasted out of this. So clearly, the larger time frame bias, which I define as like who's in control for our purposes as trading every day, which is the last 1 to 4 months is the big picture. But that amalgamation of those three time frames, right? Clearly, the bulls have been in charge, which is why I was pretty confident saying that at least we'll break out of this. It's a tough call because you don't know the future, but you have to ask yourself, like, you know, how much are you willing to risk? And your entry price was around like just say a little over 2,000
Hmm.
to get what you want out of it. And I run into that problem as as well because you know if your next target is up here and you said, well, that's when I would definitely take half. Remember, you could always use the quad exit, which is like giving yourself choices. Someone, you know, Kobe might just be like, oh, half off here, 25 here, keep a runner, right? And a huddler who's like the guy that's sending me all the news that I also post in the channel about the Ethereum ETF. And I posted that chart about the I'm sorry, the Ethereum to Bitcoin ratio, which was in Ethereum's favor now, and it hasn't broken its all-time highs like Bitcoin has. Then that little voice comes in here. It's like, man, if I do the quad exit and follow correct process, if it does break out, I'm going to feel pain because I made less money, and I'm going to judge myself. And it's like that hindsight bias comes in because like you're judging yourself with information you didn't have then. I mean, another way to look at it, and I helped someone with the same problem because this was in the coin optimism, and this was last holiday. He got an airdrop, and all of a sudden he had $10,000, and that was enough for his you know child's tuition for the year. He's in South Africa, and just on principle, I said, yeah, of course. So we did a quad. I think he took 75% off, and then I got a call from him after midnight. He was drunk. And he's like, I'm all back in, and then I'm like, man, I'm thinking if I'm wrong, he's gonna hate me. But I'm like, okay, I just have to like talk to him about the system. I'm like, anything can happen, but what do you? One of the things I talked to him about might help you is like, well, what could you do with the money if you had it now? You have your kid's tuition right now. No one knows the future. And it is a sell signal because it's at the high extreme of the market. And he thought about it. I'm like, why don't you take out exactly the amount you need for the tuition and let the rest ride come? And that he liked that. That psychologically it felt right. And he took a big amount out and he got to pay for his kids' So I guess you could ask yourself, like, what is there anything you could use for the money right now that excites you because it is a winning trade?
Yeah, I think
And
my last chunk I sold it, I was looking at my notes, 3,753, because I go, ooh, I don't think we're going past the four on Ethereum. I don't think we're going past the 4,000 at this juncture. So I'm going to go ahead and take some now so I don't miss out on that. But I just did 25% of my position.
where,
We'll see.
what price level did you take 25% off of? Because that's good.
Let's see. It was on the 20th. Let's see. $3,753.83. I was at
Oh,
8:07 in the
okay.
morning. Yeah.
You already answered. I didn't know you did that. So you already did the first correct thing. You could take half at 25. It's fine. It's fine. And then the next thing you would just do, and because your price level is so low, you could obviously just do this with a mental stop. But technically, you should go into whatever and have a stop loss at your break even point. And now you can just relax. And then the next trouble area where you would have, take the next 25% off, if you could have a half off, would be the real mama zone. Because what could happen is you might say, well, the low odds scenario is that we just break out soon. On first test, this thing can go sideways for 1 or 2 months and it could bounce between here and here. And you're a trader, so it's like wouldn't that be cool to just reload into this year? And then, you reduced risk, you followed the right thing, and you went long at support, which is also a correct process. And then you made more money and you potentially reduced risk because what you're trying to reduce risk is this reversal climax all the way down here. What I think is going to happen these times is that they're going to go up and just form like a sideways box, like it'll go up here and just go sideways for a bit. Let's say test if this breaks in the next couple of days. A little bit too big here, not 26. I think it might be a repeat of the rally that we had in 24, and that there was a lot of profits to be had, but that old energy of where like there was like 3 or 4 months where just everything was going up, even maybe like 5, 6 months, and then there was also within that 5 and 6 months. I'm not saying every coin went up for that long, but in general, the market and there different coins had their times when they went up. That's what brings everyone in, and that's when the energy was crazy. It just isn't the same now. If you just want to look at the short-term bias, we do have this bullish engulfing candlestick pattern. So odds are, like if this closed right now, I would be making a sideways, despite being at major resistance. I'd be sideways to up because of the way this closed. Maybe sideways, which basically I'm not going to go short in the morning because I anticipate this would break out. And then I'd have to get better trade location to short because of how bullish we're closing. There's really good odds just based on the candlestick pattern category that, this could be a short-term balance breakout. And as well, like if we close for Bitcoin right now, because of the volatility contraction, that also, and the mature balance, that would, two factors that increase the probabilities for a trend. It would be nice if there was some market moving news tomorrow. I'll see. I'll just double. I don't think there was when I checked out. It's Friday as well on Econo Day. But if this, maybe this will just expand the range, and then it'll be, it'll look like it's trending because the volatility will, but then there'll be long and shorts on both ends of these extremes. And then early next week, when there's a FOMC, then we'll have more of a mature bounce, and then we'll get the breakout that sustains. Because this false breakout gave us a heads up that this thing's not going up. And usually, what the false breakout or selling tail means is it's not going to go into a quote sideways phase, but going to go into like almost like a climax phase. But because of the bigger picture bounce breakout and all the time frames being up, or at least the bigger picture and intermediate, I thought it was just going to be like a tight sideways phase, which it was. It wasn't going to be like I'm going to go up here, have a selling tail, and now have a giant climax reversal. This is actually really bullish that we're holding this structure in this sort of like tight, shallow fashion that's way above here. One of the heads up that things might get bad when things get overheated is like these huge bearish engulfing patterns at these giant overextend ranges when you have 5 to 6 leg counts up and you have a hook from extremes and you're like, okay, bears could really step in here. Now this went sideways for a while, but you could just see how vicious the red is compared to the green, right? And also, even though the bulls were stepping up here, I have to remind myself this too. When when you're building structure and you start to be near a zone, like there's two principles that are sometimes confusing because like this is actually a strong zone because it was touched so many times. But then there's also this principle that the more times you touch a zone, the greater the odds that it breaks. But it's the way that it touches. These are these action reactions and they're super wide and they have time in between them. This was like water corroding the side of a limestone. It was just wouldn't leave it. That's that when it goes sideways near a zone and then it breaks from it, increases the odds that you're gonna have a breakdown. Boom. And you could that works in our favor a lot. Like right here, I was using that same principle that I showed you on the downside to say, hey, now this odds has greater odds to be a breakout because not only is this fractal balance more mature, we're not getting these bearish engulfing stick candlestick patterns that are giving a heads up. FYI, you don't have to be the first to short this, but if you see such a violent move after such a crazy extension, then just pull it to the fib ratio, go to the last leg, and just be patient and know that you're going to make money on the short side. It just works very well, even on this day time frame, which I was could be any time frame for that. But yeah, we went really shallow breakout. Now also really shallow, but you know, even if this expanded here and hit that, I'm always going to go long because of the time frame alignment at these bigger zones. But we were like we said before, because of the short term bias being neutral, right? We were able to go short in this time frame because everything's sideways there. So yeah, retail. See, I wish retail would not chase these pump style meme coins and chase like AI stuff that we talk about here that still has, at least has some utility. But they're gonna buy what they're gonna buy. Looking very strong. I wish I invested in this one. I almost did. I wrote a business plan for a new allocation like a year and a half ago, and I was supposed to have a very smaller portfolio where 25% of it was in Ripple. And somehow I just never bought any. I don't know why. Happens. But yeah, for people that had it, looking really strong. And then, amazing zero line reject. One of the best ones I've ever seen, right? When you have the blue turbo go over and the yellow line doesn't, that's classic super momentum. Um, yeah, I might, it's looking really good. That's Ox. Yo. Lots of looking like pullback continuation patterns. Objective, very good. Dot has great staking rewards, but it takes about a month to unstake it if you want to do it privately on a ledger. Yeah, curve relative strength today. I don't follow the fundamentals of it, but this was the signal I gave in the channel. This was, yeah, it was a nice move for everybody. But like most coins, stuck in these giant ranges. But if this is the time that it does break, there will be a bull run. There'll be a phase like we've never seen. And I just want to clarify that while the height on this is correct for the bounce breakout, because the phase will be because markets go longer in time as they bounce than they trend, we have to just imagine this would be much shorter. Yeah, maybe like August or something, July 26th. Rally, summer, breakdown, boom, But it would be nice if it got, you know, it's just crazy that there's so much more institutional money in the market, but yet the alts are nowhere near what they were. And if we look at the total market cap, no. I don't know where that chart is, but I was just going to say that even though, right, the crypto total market cap, let's just go back, right? And it's simply because, right? So if you look at the crypto total market cap, it's way higher than it was. But yet, why are all the other, coins besides Bitcoin, not doing as well for sure, right? Besides Ethereum at its all-time highs, but it didn't even break it yet, and it's not even at its true all-time highs, and the alts are really shitty. It's because Bitcoin's been so dominant. So we need that Bitcoin dominance to really go down, right? But look, boom, 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 boom. But then when we go to the crypto total market cap, excluding Bitcoin, right, we also see that it's also at its all-time highs, but it has this bigger picture cup and handle that if this thing breaks out at the same time the Bitcoin dominance chart reverses, that's one of these counter signals I'm looking for. Uh, that is going to be exciting. But I'm also open to the possibility that this, like anything, could fail. And I'd like to pull back there. That's the first start of it. Right. So the Bitcoin dominance gave us a little bit of that boost in alts. Then when it hit this support zone, which broken resistance becomes support, it's just whatever. This is all season scenario number one, which I even wrote ahead of time. Like this is the lower odds one to hold, and it didn't. Uh, is now sort of getting this pullback continuation pattern to the downside, which could be good for alts, which is why I think Ethereum and other coins were stronger than Bitcoin today. But really, until we get the violent, right? You see this January 2021, this is when alt season started. You see when Bitcoin had this violent climax, right? So when I say all trends, see all balances, I'm sorry, all balances will end in a trend no matter what. But all trends, you'd think conversely that all trends would have to end in a balance. That's true most of the time, but some of the time they end in this reversal called a climax, right? Which is this shown. And until and you notice that when we got the climax and not this sideways junk here that we're getting, that's when alt season started, which lasted pretty much January 2021 to November 2021. And there was these double tops were sort of revisited almost that November one in April, which is represented by this sideways action. But this is when it started to reverse, and Bitcoin's been on a tear since. So we're sort of this. That's why I have this as the higher odds scenario. Just so everyone know, this is the 2021. It's also right. This is a golden ratio. This is that other fib ratio that's not as prominent, but it's hitting some mathematical things, but it's also basically based on real structure of that new start of the January 2021 bull run. So interesting chart. I'll keep an eye on this one. This is not like any other bull run I've been in. This is the third one now that I'm experiencing, and it's a little different. I'll just say right now, the every bull run before it's been considered a scam and a joke, but yet there's been these insane moves. 4.5 years ago, whatever, 5 years ago, when we were all talking about it, it was we only dreamed that there would be banks that weren't dissing on it that would allow you to use it. I mean, I've gotten kicked out of banks back in the day because of it, and now they want you to be there because of it. I've never seen such a flip. It feels like 40 years, but it's only been 4. So I keep reminding myself like that because emotionally, I feel like, man, alts are never gonna fucking move. They've been sitting here forever. It feels like shit. But then I just remind myself, it's moved every other time, and this might be the most insane time ever because we never had this type of influx before. The downside is that they kind of act like boomers. They're only into these other bigger caps, and they're either scared or slow to get out of it. So even though Bitcoin's been pumped by it hasn't created that frenzy for retail to come back, and hopefully some OGs that are Gen X and millennials will pump it that have a lot of bags from back in the day, and then it'll attract the retail, and then we'll. But it's like this super extended cycle, like I've never seen so far. But that could actually be a good thing. In the end, it's just a burden to sit through. But like I said before, there's always that firm specific risk, not this overall market dynamic that I'm talking about, where even though things might be up for alts the last couple of days, if you have a CEO that is a scum, it doesn't really matter. Firm specific risk. So bet wisely, bet smartly, and most importantly, keep an optimal state of mind. And I'll see you guys in the room. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye, guys.